The Book of Dragons by Edith Nesbit. The Island of the Nine Whirlpools. The dark arch that led to the witch's cave was hung with a black and yellow fringe of live snakes. As the queen went in, keeping carefully in the middle of the arch, all the snakes lifted their wicked flat heads and stared at her with their wicked yellow eyes. You know it is not good manners to stare, even at royalty, except of course for cats. And the snakes had been so badly brought up that they even put their tongues out at the poor lady. Nasty, thin, sharp tongues they were too. Now, the queen's husband was, of course, the king, and besides being a king, he was an enchanter, and considered to be quite at the top of his profession, so he was very wise, and he knew that when kings and queens want children, the queen always goes to see a witch. So he gave the queen the witch's address, and the queen called on her, though she was very frightened and did not like it at all. The witch was sitting by a fire of sticks, stirring something bubbly in a shiny copper cauldron. "What do you want, my dear?" she said to the queen. "Oh, if you please," said the queen, "I want a baby, a very nice one. We don't want any expense spared. My husband said—" "Oh, yes," said the witch, "I know all about him. And so you want a child. Do you know it will bring you sorrow?" "It will bring me joy first," said the queen. "Great sorrow," said the witch. "Greater joy," said the queen. Then the witch said, "Well, have it your own way. I suppose it's much as your place is worth to go back without it." "The king would be very much annoyed," said the poor queen. "Well, well," said the witch, "what will you give me for the child?" "Anything you ask for, and all I have," said the queen. "Then give me your gold crown." The queen took it off quickly. "And your necklace of blue sapphires?" The queen unfastened it. "And your pearl bracelets?" The queen unclasped them. "And your ruby clasps?" And the queen undid the clasps. "Now, the lilies from your breast." The queen gathered together the lilies. "And the diamonds of your little bright shoe buckles." The queen pulled off her shoes. Then the witch stirred the stuff that was in the cauldron, and one by one she threw in the gold crown, and the sapphire necklace, and the pearl bracelets, and the ruby clasps, and the diamonds of the little bright shoe buckles, and last of all, she threw in the lilies. The stuff in the cauldron boiled up in foaming flashes of yellow and blue and red and white and silver, and sent out a sweet scent. And presently the witch poured it out into a pot and set it to cool in the doorway among the snakes. Then she said to the queen, "Your child will have hair as golden as your crown, eyes as blue as your sapphires. The red of your rubies will lie on its lips, and its skin will be clear and pale as your pearls. Its soul will be white and sweet as your lilies, and your diamonds will be no clearer than its wits." "Oh, thank you, said the queen. "And when will it come?" "You will find it when you get home." "And won't you have something for yourself?" asked the queen. "Any little thing you fancy. Would you like a country or a sack of jewels?" "Nothing, thank you," said the witch. "I could make more diamonds in a day than I should wear in a year." "Well, but do let me do some little thing for you," the queen went on. "Aren't you tired of being a witch? Wouldn't you like to be a duchess or princess or something like that?" "There is one thing I should rather like," said the witch, "but it's hard to get in my trade." Tell me what, said the queen. I should like someone to love me, said the witch. Then the queen threw her arms around the witch's neck and kissed her 100 times. Why, she said, I love you better than my life. You've given me the baby, and the baby shall love you too. Perhaps it will, said the witch, and when the sorrow comes, send for me. Each of your 50 kisses will be a spell to bring me to you. Now, drink up your medicine, there's a dear, and run along home. So the queen drank the stuff in the pot, which was quite cool by this time, and she went out under the fringe of snakes, and they all behaved like good Sunday school children. Some of them even tried to drop a curtsy to her as she went by, though that is not easy when you are hanging wrong way up by your tail. But the snakes knew their queen was friends with their mistress, so, of course, they had to do their best to be civil. When the queen got home, sure enough, there was the baby lying in the cradle with the royal arms blazoned on it, crying as naturally as possible. It had pink ribbons to tie up its sleeves, so the queen saw at once it was a girl. When the king knew this, he tore his black hair with fury. "Oh, you silly, silly queen," he said. "Why didn't I marry a clever lady? Did you think I went to all the trouble and expense of sending you to a witch to get a girl? You knew well enough it was a boy I wanted, a boy, an heir, a prince, to learn all my magic and my enchantments, and to rule the kingdom after me. I'll bet a crown, my crown," he said. "You never even thought to tell the witch what kind you wanted, did you now?" And the queen hung her head and had to confess that she had only asked for a child. "Very well, madame," said the king, "very well. Have your own way, and make the most of your daughter while she is a child." The queen did. All the years of her life had never held half so much happiness as now lived in each of the moments when she held her little baby in her arms. And the years went on, and the king grew more and more clever at magic, and more disagreeable at home. And the princess grew more beautiful and more dear every day she lived. The queen and the princess were feeding the goldfish in the courtyard fountains with crumbs of the princess's 18th birthday cake, when the king came into the courtyard looking as black as thunder, with his black raven hopping after him. He shook his fist at his family, as indeed he generally did whenever he met them, for he was not a king with pretty home manners. The raven sat down on the edge of the marble basin and tried to peck the goldfish. It was all he could do to show that he was in the same temper as his master. "A girl indeed," said the king angrily. "I wonder how you can dare to look me in the face when you remember how your silliness has spoiled everything." "You oughtn't to speak to my mother like that," said the princess. She was 18, and it came to her suddenly and all in a moment that she was grown up, so she spoke out. The king could not utter a word for several minutes. He was too angry. But the queen said, "My dear child, don't interfere," quite crossly, for she was frightened. And to her husband she said, "My dear, why do you go on worrying about it? Our daughter is not a boy, it is true, but she may marry a clever man who could rule your kingdom after you and learn as much magic as you ever cared to teach him." Then the king found his tongue. "If she does marry," he said slowly, "her husband will have to be a very clever man. Oh yes, very clever indeed, and he will have to know a very great deal more magic than I shall ever care to teach him." The queen knew at once by the king's tone that he was going to be disagreeable. "Ah," she said, "don't punish the child because she loves her mother." "I'm not going to punish her for that," that, said he. I'm only going to teach her to respect her father. And without another word he went off to his laboratory and worked all night, boiling different coloured things in crucibles and copying charms and curious twisted letters from old brown books with mould stains on their yellowy pages. The next day his plan was all arranged. He took the poor princess to the lone tower, which stands on an island in the sea 1,000 miles from everywhere. He gave her a dowry and settled a handsome income on her. He engaged a competent dragon to look after her, and also a respectable griffin whose birth and upbringing he knew all about, and he said, "Here you shall stay, my dear, respectful daughter, till the clever man comes to marry you. He'll have to be clever enough to sail a ship through the 9 whirlpools that spin around the island, and to kill the dragon and the griffin. Till he comes, you'll never get any older or any wiser. No doubt he will come soon. You can employ yourself in embroidering your wedding gown. I wish you joy, my dutiful child." And his carriage, drawn by live thunderbolts, thunder travels very fast, rose in the air and disappeared, and the poor princess was left with the dragon and the griffin on the island of the 9 whirlpools. The queen, left at home, cried for a day and a night, and then she remembered the witch and called to her, and the witch came and the queen told her all. "For the sake of the twice 25 kisses you gave me," said the witch, "I will help you, but it is the last thing I can do, and it is not much. Your daughter is under a spell, and I can take you to her, but if I do, you will have to be turned to stone, and to say so till the spell is taken off the child." "I would be a stone for 1,000 years," said the poor queen, "if at the end of them I could see my dear again." So the witch took the queen in a carriage drawn by live sunbeams, which travel more quickly than anything else in the world, and much quicker than thunder, and so away and away to the lone tower on the island of the 9 whirlpools. And there was the princess sitting on the floor in the best room of the lone tower, crying as if her heart would break, and the dragon and the griffin were sitting primly on each side of her. "Oh, mother, mother, mother," she cried, and hung around the queen's neck as if she would never let go. "Now," said the witch, when they had all cried as much as was good for them, "I can do 1 or 2 other little things for you. Time shall not make the princess sad. All days will be like one day till her deliverer comes, and you and I, dear queen, will sit in stone at the gate of the tower. In doing this for you, I lose all my witch's powers, and when I say the spell that changes you to stone, I shall change with you. And if ever we come out of the stone, I shall be a witch no more, but only a happy old woman." Then the 3 kissed one another again and again, and the witch said the spell, and on each side of the door there was now a stone lady. One of them had a stone crown on its head, and a stone scepter in its hand, but the other held a stone tablet with words on it, which the griffin and the dragon could not read, though they both had a very good education. And now all days seemed like one day to the princess, and the next day always seemed the day when her mother would come out of the stone and kiss her again. And the years went slowly by. The wicked king died, and someone else took his kingdom, and many things were changed in the world, but the island did not change, nor the 9 whirlpools, nor the griffin, nor the dragon, nor the 2 stone ladies. And all the time, from the very first, the day of the princess's deliverance was coming, creeping nearer and nearer and nearer. But no one saw it coming except the princess, and she only in dreams. And the years went by in tens and in hundreds, and still the 9 whirlpools spun around, roaring in triumph the story of many a good ship that had gone down in their swirl, bearing with it some prince who had tried to win the princess and her dowry. And the great sea knew all the other stories of the princes who had come from very far and had seen the whirlpools and had shaken their wise young heads and said, "'Bout ship," and gone discreetly home to their nice, safe, comfortable kingdoms. But no one told the story of the deliverer who was to come. And the years went by. Now, after more scores of years than you would like to add up on your slate, a certain sailor boy sailed on the high seas with his uncle, who was a skilled skipper. And the boy could reef a sail and coil a rope and keep the ship's nose steady before the wind. And he was as good a boy as you would find in a month of Sundays and worthy to be a prince. Now, there is something which is wiser than all the world, and it knows when people are worthy to be princes. And this something came from the farther side of the 7th world and whispered in the boy's ear. And the boy heard, though he did not know he heard, and he looked out over the black sea with the white foam horses galloping over it, and far away he saw a light. And he said to the skipper, his uncle, "What light is that?" And then the skipper said, "All good things defend you, Nigel, from sailing near that light. It is not mentioned in all charts, but it is marked in the old chart I steer by, which was my father's fathers before me, and his father's fathers before him. It is the light that shines from the lone tower that stands above the 9 whirlpools, and when my father's father was young, he heard from the very old man, his great-great-grandfather, that in that tower an enchanted princess, fairer than the day, waits to be delivered. But there is no deliverance, so never stare that way and think no more of the princess, for that is only an idle tale. But the whirlpools are quite real." So, of course, from that day Nigel thought of nothing else. And as he sailed hither and thither upon the high seas, he saw from time to time the light that shone out to the sea across the wild swirl of the 9 whirlpools. And one night, when the ship was at anchor and the skipper asleep in his bunk, Nigel launched the ship's boat and stared alone over the dark sea towards the light. He dared not go very near till daylight should show him what, indeed, were the whirlpools he had to dread. But when the dawn came, he saw the lone tower standing dark against the pink and primrose of the east, and about its base the sullen swirl of black water, and he heard the wonderful roar of it. So he hung off and on all that day, and for 6 days besides. And when he had watched 7 days, he knew something. For you are certain to know something if you give for 7 days your whole thought to it, even though it be only the first declension, or the 9 times table, or the dates of the Norman kings. What he knew was this, that for 5 minutes out of the 1,440 minutes that make up a day, the whirlpools slipped into silence, while the tide went down and left the yellow sand bare. And every day this happened, but every day it was 5 minutes earlier than it had been the day before. He made sure of this by the ship's chronometer, which he had thoughtfully brought with him. So, on the 8th day, at 5 minutes before noon, Nigel got ready. And when the whirlpools suddenly stopped swirling and the tide sank like water in a basin that has a hole in it, he stuck to his oars and put his back into the stroke, and presently beached the boat on the yellow sand. Then he dragged it into a cave and sat down to wait. By 5 minutes and 1 second past noon, the whirlpools were black and busy again, and Nigel peeped out of his cave. And on the rocky ledge overhanging the sea, he saw a princess as beautiful as the day, with golden hair and a green gown, and he went out to meet her. "I've come to save you," he said. "How darling and beautiful you are." "You are very good, and very clever, and very dear," said the princess, smiling and giving him both her hands. He shut a little kiss in each hand before he let them go. "So, now when the tide is low again, I will take you away in my boat," he said. "But what about the dragon and the griffin?" asked the princess. "Dear me," said Nigel, "I didn't know about them. I suppose I can kill them?" "Don't be a silly boy," said the princess, pretending to be very grown up, for though she had been on the island time only knows how many years, she was just 18, and she still liked pretending. "You haven't a sword or a shield or anything." "Well, don't the beasts ever go to sleep?" "Why, yes," said the princess, "but only once in 24 hours, and then the dragon is turned to stone. But the griffin has dreams. The griffin sleeps at tea time every day, but the dragon sleeps every day for 5 minutes, and every day it is 3 minutes later than it was the day before." "What time does he sleep today?" asked Nigel. "At 11, said the princess. "Ah," said Nigel. "Can you do sums?" "No," said the princess sadly. "I was never good at them." "Then I must," said Nigel. "I can, but it's slow work and it makes me very unhappy. It'll take me days and days." "Don't begin yet," said the princess. "You'll have plenty of time to be unhappy when I'm not with you. Tell me all about yourself." So he did, and then she told him all about herself. "I know I've been here a long time," she said, "but I don't know what time is. And I am very busy sewing silk flowers on a golden gown for my wedding day. And the griffin does the housework. His wings are so convenient and feathery for sweeping and dusting. And the dragon does the cooking. He's hot inside, so of course it's no trouble for him. And though I don't know what time is, I'm sure it's time for my wedding day, because my golden gown only wants one more white daisy on the sleeve, and a lily on the bosom of it, and then it will be ready." Just then they heard a dry, rustling clatter on the rocks above them, and a snorting sound. "It's the dragon," said the princess hurriedly. "Goodbye. Be a good boy and get your sum done." And she ran away and left him to his arithmetic. Now, the sum was this. If the whirlpools stop and the tide goes down once in every 24 hours, and they do it 5 minutes earlier every 24 hours, and if the dragon sleeps every day, and he does it 3 minutes earlier every day, in how many days and what time in the day will the tide go down 3 minutes before the dragon falls asleep? It is quite a simple sum, as you see. You could do it in a minute, because you have been to a good school and have taken pains with your lessons. But it was quite otherwise with poor Nigel. He sat down to work out his sum with a piece of chalk on a smooth stone. He tried it by practice and the unitary method, by multiplication and by rule of 3 3/4. He tried it by decimals and by compound interest. He tried it by square root and by cube root. He tried it by addition, simple and otherwise, and he tried it by mixed examples and vulgar fractions. But it was all of no use. Then he tried to do the sum by algebra, by simple and by quadratic equations, by trigonometry, by logarithms, and by conic sections. But it would not do. He got an answer every time, it is true, but it was always a different one, and he could not feel sure which answer was right. And just as he was feeling how much more important than anything else it is to be able to do your sums, the princess came back. And now it was getting dark. "Why, you've been 7 hours over that sum," she said, "and you haven't done it yet. Look here, this is what is written on the tablet of the statue by the lower gate. It has figures in it. Perhaps it is the answer to the sum. She held out to him a big white magnolia leaf, and she had scratched on it with the pin of her pearl brooch, and it had turned brown where she had scratched it, as magnolia leaves will do. Nigel read, "After 9 days, T 2.24, D 2.27 ounce, PS, and the griffin is artificial. R." He clapped his hands softly. "Dear Princess," he said, "I know that's the right answer. It says R2, you see, but I'll just prove it." So he hastily worked the sum backward in decimals and equations and conic sections and all the rules he could think of, and it came out right every time. "So now we must wait," said he, and they waited. And every day the princess came to see Nigel and brought him food cooked by the dragon, and he lived in his cave and talked to her while she was there, and thought about her when she was not, and they were both as happy as the longest day in summer. Then, at last came the day. Nigel and the princess laid their plans. "You're sure he won't hurt you, my only treasure?" said Nigel. "Quite," said the princess. "I only wish I were half as sure that he wouldn't hurt you." "My princess," he said tenderly, "two great powers are on our side, the power of love and the power of arithmetic. Those two are stronger than anything else in the world." So when the tide began to go down, Nigel and the princess ran out onto the sands, and there, in full sight of the terrace where the dragon kept watch, Nigel took his princess in his arms and kissed her. The griffin was busy sweeping the stairs of the lone tower, but the dragon saw, and he gave a cry of rage, and it was like 20 engines all letting off steam at the top of their voices inside Cannon Street Station. And the two lovers stood looking up at the dragon. He was dreadful to look at. His head was white with age, and his beard had grown so long that he caught his claws in it as he walked. His wings were white with the salt that had settled on them from the spray of the sea. His tail was long and thick and jointed and white, and had little legs to it, any number of them, far too many, so that it looked like a very large fat silkworm, and his claws were as long as lessons and as sharp as bayonets. "Goodbye, love," cried Nigel, and ran across the yellow sand toward the sea. He had one end of a cord tied to his arm. The dragon was clambering down the face of the cliff, and next moment he was crawling and writhing and sprawling and wriggling across the beach after Nigel, making great holes in the sand with his heavy feet, and the very end of his tail, where there were no legs, made, as it dragged, a mark in the sand, such as you make when you launch a boat, and he breathed fire till the wet sand hissed again, and the water of the little rock pools got quite frightened, and all went off in steam. Still, Nigel held on, and the dragon after him. The princess could see nothing for the steam, and she stood, crying bitterly, but still holding on tight with her right hand to the other end of the cord that Nigel had told her to hold, while, with her left, she held the ship's chronometer, and looked at it through her tears as he had bidden her look, so as to know when to pull the rope. On went Nigel over the sand, and on went the dragon after him, and the tide was low, and sleepy little waves lapped the sand's edge. Now, at the lip of the water, Nigel paused and looked back, and the dragon made a bound, beginning a scream of rage that was like all the engines of all the railways in England. But it never uttered the second half of that scream, for now it knew suddenly that it was sleepy. It turned to hurry back to dry land, because sleeping near whirlpools is so unsafe. But before it reached the shore, sleep caught it and turned it to stone. Nigel, seeing this, ran shoreward for his life, and the tide began to flow in, and the time of the whirlpool's sleep was nearly over, and he stumbled, and he waded, and he swam, and the princess pulled for dear life at the cord in her hand, and pulled him up onto the dry shelf of rock, just as the great sea dashed in and made itself once more into the girdle of 9 whirlpools all around the island. But the dragon was asleep under the whirlpools, and when he woke up from being asleep, he found he was drowned, so there was an end of him. "Now there's only the griffin," said Nigel, and the princess said, "Yes, only," and she kissed Nigel and went back to sew the last leaf of the last lily on the bosom of her wedding gown. She thought and thought of what was written on the stone about the griffin being artificial, and next day she said to Nigel, "You know, a griffin is half a lion and half an eagle, and the other 2 halves when they've joined make the ʟɪᴏ. But I've never seen him, yet I have an idea." So they talked it over and arranged everything. When the griffin fell asleep that afternoon at tea time, Nigel went softly behind him and trod on his tail, and at the same time the princess cried, "Look out! There's a lion behind you." And the griffin, waking suddenly from his dreams, twisted his large neck around to look for the lion, saw a lion's flank, and fastened its eagle beak in it. For the griffin had been artificially made by the king enchanter, and the 2 halves had never really got used to each other. So now the eagle half of the griffin, who was still rather sleepy, believed that it was fighting a lion, and the lion part, being half asleep, thought it was fighting an eagle, and the whole griffin, in its deep drowsiness, hadn't the sense to pull itself together and remember what it was made of. So the griffin rolled over and over, one end of it fighting with the other, till the eagle end pecked the lion end to death, and the lion end tore the eagle end with its claws till it died. And so the griffin that was made of a lion and an eagle perished, exactly as if it had been made of Kilkenny cats. "Poor griffin," said the princess. "It was very good at housework. I always liked it better than the dragon. It wasn't so hot-tempered." At that moment there was a soft, silky rush behind the princess, and there was her mother, the queen, who had slipped out of the stone statue at the moment the griffin was dead, and now came hurrying to take her dear daughter in her arms. The witch was clambering slowly off her pedestal. She was a little stiff from standing still so long. When they had all explained everything over and over to each other as many times as was good for them, the witch said, "Well, but what about the whirlpools?" And Nigel said he didn't know. Then the witch said, "I'm not a witch any more. I'm only a happy old woman, but I know some things still. Those whirlpools were made by the enchanter king's dropping 9 drops of his blood into the sea. And his blood was so wicked that the sea has been trying ever since to get rid of it, and that made the whirlpools. Now, you've only got to go out at low tide." So Nigel understood and went out at a low tide and found in the sandy hollow left by the first whirlpool a great ruby. That was the first drop of the wicked king's blood. The next day Nigel found another, and next day another, and so on till the 9th day, and then the sea was as smooth as glass. The 9 rubies were used afterwards in agriculture. You'd only to throw them out into a field if you wanted it ploughed. Then the whole surface of the land turned itself over in its anxiety to get rid of something so wicked, and in the morning the field was found to be ploughed as thoroughly as any young man at Oxford. So the wicked king did some good after all. When the sea was smooth, ships came from far and wide, bringing people to hear the wonderful story, and a beautiful palace was built, and the princess was married to Nigel in her gold dress, and they all lived happily as long as was good for them. The dragon still lies, a stone dragon on the sand, and at low tide the little children play around him and over him. But the pieces that were left of the griffin were buried under the herb bed in the palace garden, because it had been so good at housework, and it wasn't its fault that it had been made so badly and put to such poor work as guarding a lady from her lover. I have no doubt that you will wish to know what the princess lived on during the long years when the dragon did the cooking. My dear, she lived on her income, and that is a thing that a great many people would like to be able to do. The Dragon Tamers. There was once an old castle. It was so old that its walls and towers and turrets and gateways and arches had crumbled to ruins, and of all its old splendor there were only 2 little rooms left, and it was here that John the blacksmith had set up his forge. He was too poor to live in a proper house, and no one asked any rent for the rooms in the ruin, because all the lords of the castle were dead and gone this many a year. So there, John blew his bellows and hammered his iron, and did all the work which came his way. This was not much, because most of the trade went to the mayor of the town, who was also a blacksmith in quite a large way of business, and had his huge forge facing the square of the town, and had 12 apprentices, all hammering like a nest of woodpeckers, and 12 journeymen to order their apprentices about, and a patent forge, and a self-acting hammer, and electric bellows, and all things handsome about him. So, of course, the townspeople, whenever they wanted a horse shod or a shaft mended, went to the mayor. John the blacksmith struggled on as best he could, with a few odd jobs from travellers and strangers, who did not know what a superior forge the mayor's was. The 2 rooms were warm and weather-tight, but not very large, so the blacksmith got into the way of keeping his old iron, his odds and ends, and his 2 pence worth of coal in the great dungeon down under the castle. It was a very fine dungeon indeed, with a handsome vaulted roof, and big iron wings whose staples were built into the wall, very strong and convenient for tying captives to, and at one end was a broken flight of wide steps leading down no one knew where. Even the lords of the castle in the good old times had never known where those steps led to, but every now and then they would kick a prisoner down the steps in their light-hearted, hopeful way, and sure enough, the prisoners never came back. The blacksmith had never dared to go beyond the 7th step, and no more have I, so I know no more than he did what was at the bottom of those stairs. John the blacksmith had a wife and a little baby. When his wife was not doing the housework, she used to nurse the baby and cry, remembering the happy days when she lived with her father, who kept 17 cows and lived quite in the country, and when John used to come courting her in the summer evenings, as smart, with a posy in his buttonhole. And now John's hair was getting grey, and there was hardly ever enough to eat. As for the baby, it cried a good deal at odd times, but at night, when its mother had settled down to sleep, it would always begin to cry, quite as a matter of course, so that she hardly got any rest at all. This made her very tired. The baby could make up for its bad nights during the day if it liked, but the poor mother couldn't. So whenever she had nothing to do, she used to sit and cry, because she was tired out with work and worry. One evening, the blacksmith was busy with his forge. He was making a goat shoe for the goat of a very rich lady who wished to see how the goat liked being shod, and also whether the shoe would come to 5 pence or 7 pence before she ordered the whole set. This was the only order John had had that week, and as he worked, his wife sat and nursed the baby who, for a wonder, was not crying. Presently, over the noise of the bellows and over the clank of the iron, there came another sound. The blacksmith and his wife looked at one another. "I heard nothing," said he. "Neither did I," said she. But the noise grew louder, and the two were so anxious not to hear it that he hammered away at that goat shoe harder than he had ever hammered in his life, and she began to sing to the baby, a thing she had not had the heart to do for weeks. But through the blowing and hammering and singing, the noise came louder and louder, and the more they tried not to hear it, the more they had to. It was like the noise of some great creature purring, purring, purring. And the reason they did not want to believe they really heard it was that it came from the great dungeon down below, where the old iron was, and the firewood, and the 2 pence worth of coal, and the broken steps that went down into the dark and ended no one knew where. "It can't be anything in the dungeon," said the blacksmith, wiping his face. "Why, I shall have to go down there after more coals in a minute." "There isn't anything there, of course. How could there be?" said his wife. And they tried so hard to believe that there could be nothing there that, presently, they very nearly did believe it. Then the blacksmith took his shovel in one hand, and his riveting hammer in the other, and hung the old stable lantern on his little finger and went down to get the coals. "I am not taking the hammer because I think there is something there," said he, "but it is handy for breaking the large lumps of coal." "I quite understand," said his wife, who had brought the coal home in her apron that very afternoon and knew that it was all coal dust. So he went down the winding stairs to the dungeon and stood at the bottom of the steps holding the lantern above his head, just to see that the dungeon really was empty, as usual. Half of it was empty as usual, except for the old iron and odds and ends, and the firewood and the coals. But the other side was not empty. It was quite full, and what it was full of was dragon. "It must have come up those nasty broken steps from goodness knows where," said the blacksmith to himself, trembling all over as he tried to creep back up the winding stairs. But the dragon was too quick for him. It put out a great claw and caught him by the leg, and as it moved it rattled like a great bunch of keys, or like the sheet iron they make thunder out of in pantomimes. "No, you don't," said the dragon in a spluttering voice like a damp squib. "Dearie, dearie me," said poor John, trembling more than ever in the claw of the dragon. "Here's a nice end for a respectable blacksmith." The dragon seemed very much struck by this remark. "Do you mind saying that again?" said he quite politely. So John said again very distinctly, "Here is a nice end for a respectable blacksmith." "I didn't know," said the dragon. "Fancy now, you're the very man I wanted." "So I understand you to say before," said John, his teeth chattering. "Oh, I don't mean what you mean," said the dragon, "but I should like you to do a job for me. One of my wings has got some of the rivets out of it, just above the joint. Could you put that to rights?" "I might, sir," said John politely, for you must always be polite to a possible customer, even if he be a dragon. "A master craftsman, you are a master, of course. I can see in a minute what's wrong," the dragon went on. "Come round here and feel my plates, will you?" John timidly went around when the dragon took his claw away, and sure enough, the dragon's wing was hanging loose, and several of the plates near the joint certainly wanted riveting. The dragon seemed to be made entirely out of iron armor, a sort of tawny red rust color it was, from damp no doubt, and under it he seemed to be covered with something furry. All the blacksmith welled up in John's heart, and he felt more at ease. "You could certainly do with a rivet or two, sir," said he. "In fact, you want a good many." "Well, get to work then," said the dragon. "You mend my wing, and then I'll go out and eat up all the town, and if you make a really smart job of it, I'll eat you last. There." "I don't want to be eaten last, sir," said John. "Well, then I'll eat you first," said the dragon. "I don't want that, sir, either," said John. "Go on with you, you silly man," said the dragon. "You don't know your own silly mind. Come, set to work." "I don't like the job, sir," said John, "and that's the truth. I know how easily accidents happen. It's all fair and smooth, and please rivet me and I'll eat you last, and then you get to work and you give a gentleman a bit of a nip or a dig under his rivets, and then it's fire and smoke, and no apologies will meet the case." "Upon my word of honor as a dragon," said the other. "I know you wouldn't do it on purpose, sir," said John, "but any gentleman will give a jump and a sniff if he's nipped, and one of your sniffs would be enough for me. Now, if you'd just let me fasten you up—" "It would be so undignified," objected the dragon. "We always fasten a horse up," said John, "and he's the noble animal." "It's all very well," said the dragon, "but how do I know you'd untie me again when you'd riveted me? Give me something in pledge. What do you value most?" "My hammer," said John. "A blacksmith is nothing without a hammer." "But you'd want that for riveting me. You must think of something else, and at once, or I'll eat you first." At this moment, the baby in the room above began to scream. Its mother had been so quiet that it thought she had settled down for the night, and that it was time to begin. "Whatever's that?" said the dragon, starting so that every plate on his body rattled. "It's only the baby," said John. "What's that?" asked the dragon. "Something you value?" "Well, yes, sir, rather," said the blacksmith. "Then bring it here," said the dragon, "and I'll take care of it till you have done riveting me, and you shall tie me up." "All right, sir," said John, "but I ought to warn you. Babies are poison to dragons, so I don't deceive you. It's all right to touch, but don't you go putting it into your mouth. I shouldn't like to see any harm come to a nice-looking gentleman like you." The dragon purred at this compliment and said, "All right, I'll be careful. Now, go and fetch the thing, whatever it is." So John ran up the steps as quickly as he could, for he knew that if the dragon got impatient before it was fastened, it could heave up the roof of the dungeon with one heave of its back and kill them all in the ruins. His wife was asleep in spite of the baby's cries, and John picked up the baby and took it down and put it between the dragon's front paws. "You just purr to it, sir," he said, "and it'll be as good as gold." So the dragon purred, and his purring pleased the baby so much that it stopped crying. Then John rummaged among the heap of old iron, and found there some heavy chains and a great collar that had been made in the days when men sang over their work and put their heart into it, so that the things they made were strong enough to bear the weight of 1,000 years, let alone a dragon. John fastened the dragon up with the collar and the chains, and when he had padlocked them all on safely, he set to work to find out how many rivets would be needed. 6, 8, 10, 20, 40, said he. "I haven't half enough rivets in the shop. If you'll excuse me, sir, I'll step around to another forge and get a few dozen. I won't be a minute." And off he went, leaving the baby between the dragon's forepaws, laughing and crowing with pleasure at the very large purr of it. John ran as hard as he could into the town and found the mayor and the corporation. "There's a dragon in my dungeon," he said. "I've chained him up. Now come and help to get my baby away." And he told them all about it. But they all happened to have engagements for that evening, so they praised John's cleverness and said they were quite content to leave the matter in his hands. "But what about my baby?" said John. "Oh, well," said the mayor, "if anything should happen, you will always be able to remember that your baby perished in a good cause." So John went home again and told his wife some of the tale. "You've given the baby to the dragon?" she cried. "Oh, you unnatural parent." "Hush," said John, and he told her some more. "Now," he said, "I'm going down. After I've been down, you can go, and if you keep your head, the boy will be all right." So down went the blacksmith, and there was the dragon purring away with all his might to keep the baby quiet. "Hurry up, can't you?" he said. "I can't keep this noise all night." "I'm very sorry, sir," said the blacksmith, "but all the shops are shut. The job must wait till the morning, and don't forget, you've promised to take care of that baby. You'll find it a little wearing, I'm afraid. Good night, sir." The dragon had purred till he was quite out of breath, so now he stopped. And as soon as everything was quiet, the baby thought everyone must have settled for the night and that it was time to begin to scream. So it began. "Oh dear," said the dragon. "This is awful." He patted the baby with his claw, but it screamed more than ever. "And I am so tired too," said the dragon. "I did so hope I should have a good night." The baby went on screaming. "There'll be no peace for me after this," said the dragon. "It's enough to ruin one's nerves. Hush then, Diddums, then." And he tried to quiet the baby as if it had been a young dragon. But when he began to sing "Hush-a-bye, Dragon," the baby screamed more and more and more. "I can't keep it quiet," said the dragon, and then suddenly he saw a woman sitting on the steps. "Here, I say," said he. "Do you know anything about babies?" "I do, a little," said the mother. "Then I wish you'd take this one and let me get some sleep," said the dragon, yawning. "You can bring it back in the morning before the blacksmith comes." So the mother picked up the baby and took it upstairs and told her husband, and they went to bed happy, for they had caught the dragon and saved the baby. And next day, John went down and explained carefully to the dragon exactly how matters stood, and he got an iron gate with a grating to it, and set it up at the foot of the steps, and the dragon mewed furiously for days and days. But when he found it was no good, he was quiet. So now John went to the mayor and said, "I've got the dragon, and I've saved the town." "Noble preserver," cried the mayor, "we will get up a subscription for you and crown you in public with a laurel wreath." So the mayor put his name down for £5, and the corporation each gave 3, and other people gave their guineas and half-guineas, and half-crowns and crowns, and while the subscription was being made, the mayor ordered 3 poems at his own expense from the town poet to celebrate the occasion. The poems were very much admired, especially by the mayor and the corporation. The first poem dealt with the noble conduct of the mayor in arranging to have the dragon tied up. The second described the splendid assistance rendered by the corporation. And the third expressed the pride and joy of the poet in being permitted to sing such deeds, besides which the actions of St. George must appear quite commonplace to all, with a feeling heart or a well-balanced brain. When the subscription was finished, there was £1,000, and a committee was formed to settle what should be done with it. A third of it went to pay for a banquet to the mayor and corporation. Another third was spent in buying a gold collar with a dragon on it for the mayor, and gold medals with dragons on it for the corporation, and what was left went in committee expenses. So, there was nothing for the blacksmith, except the laurel wreath and the knowledge that it really was he who had saved the town. But after this, things went a little better with the blacksmith. To begin with, the baby did not cry so much as it had before. Then the rich lady who owned the goat was so touched by John's noble action that she ordered a complete set of shoes at 2 shillings 4 pence, and even made it up to 2 shillings 6 pence, in grateful recognition of his public-spirited conduct. Then tourists used to come in breaks from quite a long way off, and pay 2 pence each to go down the steps and peep through the iron grating at the rusty dragon in the dungeon, and it was 3 pence extra for each party if the blacksmith let off coloured fire to see it by, which, as the fire was extremely short, was 2 pence halfpenny clear profit every time. And the blacksmith's wife used to provide teas at 9 pence a head, and altogether things grew brighter week by week. The baby, named John, after his father and called Johnny for short, began presently to grow up. He was great friends with Tina, the daughter of the whitesmith, who lived nearly opposite. She was a dear little girl with yellow pigtails and blue eyes, and she was tired of hearing the story of how Johnny, when he was a baby, had been minded by a real dragon. The 2 children used to go together to peep through the iron grating at the dragon, and sometimes they would hear him mew piteously, and they would light a halfpenny's worth of coloured fire to look at him by, and they grew older and wiser. At last, one day the mayor and corporation, hunting the hare in their gold gowns, came screaming back to the town gates with the news that a lame, humpy giant as big as a tin church was coming over the marshes toward the town. "We're lost," said the mayor. "I'd give £1,000 to anyone who could keep that giant out of the town. I know what he eats by his teeth." No one seems to know what to do. But Johnny and Tina were listening, and they looked at each other and ran off as fast as their boots would carry them. They ran through the forge and down the dungeon steps and knocked at the iron door. "Who's there?" said the dragon. "It's only us," said the children. And the dragon was so dull from having been alone for 10 years that he said, "Come in, dears." "You won't hurt us or breathe fire at us or anything?" asked Tina. And the dragon said, "Not for worlds." So they went in and talked to him and told him what the weather was like outside and what there was in the papers, and at last Johnny said, "There's a lame giant in the town. He wants you." "Does he?" said the dragon, showing his teeth. "If only I were out of this." "If we might let you loose, you might manage to run away before he could catch you." "Yes, I might," answered the dragon, "but then again I mightn't." "Why, you'd never fight him?" said Tina. "No," said the dragon, "I'm all for peace, I am. You let me out and you'll see." So the children loosed the dragon from the chains and the collar, and he broke down one end of the dungeon and went out, only pausing at the forge door to get the blacksmith to rivet his wing. He met the lame giant at the gate of the town, and the giant banged on the dragon with his club, as if he were banging an iron foundry, and the dragon behaved like a smelting works, all fire and smoke. It was a fearful sight, and people watched from a distance, falling off their legs with the shock of every bang, but always getting up to look again. At last, the dragon won, and the giant sneaked away across the marshes, and the dragon, who was very tired, went home to sleep, announcing his intention of eating the town in the morning. He went back into his old dungeon because he was a stranger in the town, and he did not know of any other respectable lodging. Then Tina and Johnny went to the mayor and corporation and said, "The giant is settled. Please give us the £1,000 reward." But the mayor said, "No, no, my boy. It is not you who have settled the giant, it is the dragon. I suppose you have him chained him up again? When he comes to claim the reward, he shall have it." "He isn't chained up yet," said Johnny. "Shall I send him to claim the reward?" But the mayor said he need not trouble, and now he offered £1,000 to anyone who would get the dragon chained up again. "I don't trust you," said Johnny. "Look how you treated my father when he chained up the dragon." But the people who were listening at the door interrupted and said that if Johnny could fasten up the dragon again, they would turn out the mayor and let Johnny be mayor in his place. For they had been dissatisfied with the mayor for some time and thought they would like a change. So Johnny said, "Done," and off he went, hand in hand with Tina, and they called on all their little friends and said, "Will you help us to save the town?" Then all the children said, "Yes, of course we will. What fun." "Well then," said Tina, "you must all bring your basins of bread and milk to the forge tomorrow at breakfast time." "And if ever I am mayor," said Johnny, "I will give a banquet, and you shall be invited, and we'll have nothing but sweet things from beginning to end." All the children promised, and next morning Tina and Johnny rolled their big washing tub down the winding stair. "What's that noise?" asked the dragon. "It's only a big giant breathing," said Tina. "He's gone by now." Then, when all the town children brought their bread and milk, Tina emptied it into the wash tub, and when the tub was full, Tina knocked at the iron door with the grating in it and said, "May we come in?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon. "It's very dull here." So they went in, and with the help of 9 other children, they lifted the washing tub in and set it down by the dragon. Then all the other children went away, and Tina and Johnny sat down and cried. "What's this?" asked the dragon, "and what's the matter?" "This is bread and milk," said Johnny. "It's our breakfast, all of it." "Well," said the dragon, "I don't see what you want with breakfast. I'm going to eat everyone in the town as soon as I've rested a little." "Dear Mr. Dragon," said Tina, "I wish you wouldn't eat us. How would you like to be eaten yourself?" "Not at all," the dragon confessed, "but nobody will eat me." "I don't know," said Johnny. "There's a giant. I know. I fought with him and licked him." "Yes, but there's another come now. The one you fought was only this one's little boy. This one is half as big again." "He's 7 times as big," said Tina. "No, 9 times, said Johnny. "He's bigger than the steeple." "Oh dear," said the dragon. "I never expected this." "And the mayor has told him where you are," Tina went on, "and he is coming to eat you as soon as he has sharpened his big knife. The mayor told him you were a wild dragon, but he didn't mind. He said he only ate wild dragons with bread sauce." "That's tiresome," said the dragon. "And I suppose this sloppy stuff in the tub is the bread sauce?" The children said it was. "Of course," they added, "bread sauce is only served with wild dragons." tame ones are served with applesauce and onion stuffing. What a pity you're not a tame one. He'd never look at you then, they said. Goodbye, poor dragon. We shall never see you again, and now you know what it's like to be eaten. And they began to cry again. Well, but look here, said the dragon. Couldn't you pretend I was a tame dragon? Tell the giant that I'm just a poor little timid tame dragon that you kept for a pet? He'd never believe it, said Johnny. If you were our tame dragon, we should keep you tied up, you know. We shouldn't like to risk losing such a dear, pretty pet. And then the dragon begged them to fasten him up at once, and they did so, with the collar and chains that were made years ago, in the days when men sang over their work and made it strong enough to bear any strain. And then they went away and told the people what they had done, and Johnny was made mayor and had a glorious feast exactly as he said he would, with nothing in it but sweet things. It began with Turkish delight and halfpenny buns, and went on with oranges, toffee, coconut ice, peppermints, jam puffs, raspberry noyau, ice creams and meringues, and ended with bullseyes and gingerbread and acid drops. This was all very well for Johnny and Tina, but if you are kind to children with feeling hearts, you will perhaps feel sorry for the poor, deceived, deluded dragon, chained up in the dull dungeon with nothing to do but to think over the shocking untruths that Johnny had told him. When he thought about how he had been tricked, the poor captive dragon began to weep, and the large tears fell down over his rusting plates. And presently he began to feel faint, as people sometimes do when they have been crying, especially if they have had not anything to eat for 10 years or so. And then the poor creature dried his eyes and looked about him, and there he saw the tub of bread and milk. So he thought, if giants like this damp white stuff, perhaps I should like it too. And he tasted a little, and liked it so much that he ate it all up. And the next time the tourists came and Johnny let off the colored fire, the dragon said shyly, "Excuse my troubling you, but could you bring me a little more bread and milk?" So Johnny arranged that people should go around with carts every day to collect the children's bread and milk for the dragon. The children were fed at the town's expense on whatever they liked, and they ate nothing but cake and buns and sweet things, and they said the poor dragon was very welcome to their bread and milk. Now, when Johnny had been mayor 10 years or so, he married Tina, and on their wedding morning they went to see the dragon. He had grown quite tame, and his rusty plates had fallen off in places, and underneath he was soft and furry to stroke. So now they stroked him. And he said, "I don't know how I could have ever have liked eating anything but bread and milk. I am a tame dragon now, aren't I?" And when they said that, yes, he was. The dragon said, "I am so tame. Won't you undo me?" And some people would have been afraid to trust him, but Johnny and Tina were so happy on their wedding day that they could not believe any harm of anyone in the world. So they loosened the chains, and the dragon said, "Excuse me a moment, there are 1 or 2 little things I should like to fetch." And he moved off to those mysterious steps and went down them, out of sight into the darkness. And as he moved, more and more of his rusty plates fell off. In a few minutes, they heard him clanking up the stairs. He brought something in his mouth. It was a bag of gold. "It's no good to me," he said. "Perhaps you might find it useful." So they thanked him very kindly. "More where that came from," said he, and fetched more and more and more, so they told him to stop. So now they were rich, and so were their fathers and mothers. Indeed, Everyone was rich and there were no more poor people in the town. And they all got rich without working, which is very wrong, but the dragon had never been to school as you have, so he knew no better. And as the dragon came out of the dungeon following Johnny and Tina into the bright gold and blue of their wedding day, he blinked his eyes as a cat does in the sunshine, and he shook himself, and the last of his plates dropped off, and his wings with them, and he was just like a very, very extra-sized cat. And from that day he grew furrier and furrier, and he was the beginning of all cats. Nothing of the dragon remained except the claws, which all cats have still, as you can easily ascertain. And I hope you see now how important it is to feed your cat with bread and milk. If you were to let it have nothing to eat but mice and birds, it might grow larger and fiercer and scalier and tailier and get wings and turn into the beginning of dragons. And then there would be all the bother over again.